Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to our very first chapter module. So today we're going to be looking at chapter 1, what is psychology? So please note that this PowerPoint is posted on LMS for you. So it's module 1, what is psychology? And I'm going to make this bigger so that way we can record it. Sorry, let me get all these bugs worked out. All right. So chapter 1, module 1. So the learning outcome is we're going to define psychology, and then we're also going to look at the goals of psychology and the related fields. So what is it? So some of you might have taken a psychology class before, but for others, this is new for you. So we will be going through the very basics. So people used to believe, or it's kind of a common belief, that psychology is just common sense, or it's about mind reading or behavior analysis or just intuition or things like that, but that's not the case. So psychology, in the field of psychology, does use the scientific method. So psychologists are interested in using the scientific method to measure and study our behavior and also our mental processes. So they explain the way we behave and then also some of the things that we think. Of the goals of psychology, so psychology as a science. So psychologists try to use. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So psychology, there's 4 different goals. So psychologists are interested in being able to describe, explain, predict, and then control the behavior and mental processes. So like I said, the definition of psychology is that it's the study of the scientific study of both behavior and mental processes. So behavior is sometimes can be easier to study because it's the things that we can see, but the mental processes are like things like thinking and remembering and learning and how why we dream and sleep and all those things. So those will be some of the fun things that we're going to cover this semester. So there's 4 different goals. So I always use the example when I'm explaining the 4 goals of psychology as if we were in class. So imagine pre-COVID, we're in person and you are asked to give a presentation in front of the class. So lots of people kind of get those jitters about presenting, myself included. So I remember the first time, my very first class that I taught, I was so nervous. I'm sure my students were wondering what was going on, whether I was going to kind of have a panic attack or what was going to happen in front of the classroom, because I was so nervous. I was sweating and I had so much anxiety, and I know that it can be so hard to present. So say a psychologist is kind of they're studying a student that's presenting. So the very first thing that a psychologist is going to try to do is just to describe the behavior. So there's a student standing in front of the class, they're about to give a presentation, and they're sweating and they're pale and they're clammy, and they might be shaking a little bit. A psychologist, the first goal is just to describe. So what's going on? What behaviors are we seeing? What is some of what's the surrounding, their surroundings? So a psychologist might say, okay, there's a student and they're standing in front of a large group of people, and they're in a professional setting, they're in an institution, they're in a school, and the individual is shaking, the individual is sweating profusely, and they would just describe everything that they're seeing. The next goal of psychology is just to explain it. So the psychologist might say, okay, we're going to explain the behavior. The student is nervous to do a presentation. So maybe that person has a little bit of social anxiety, or maybe that person just doesn't really like talking in front of large groups of people, or it's one of their first times, or things like that. So I'd be explaining it. The person is having anxiety because they are having to do public speaking, which is really normal. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. Then the third goal of psychology is to predict. So if we've described the situation and then we've explained it, you could predict that the next time this student has to do a presentation in front of a large group of people or in front of a class, they're going to see these kind of nervous behaviors happen again. And then the very last goal is to control. So there's different ways that psychologists could control the situation. So maybe a behavioral psychologist would say, we're going to do some sort of exposure training. So we're going to have this person present in front of one person and then two people, and we're just going to help them practice calming techniques, and we're going to do gradual exposure until they're able to do presentations in front of large groups. And we know that type of exposure therapy is actually really, really helpful for people. So that's the 4 different goals of psychology. And when we get together, as I'm going to post a little handout too for you to practice, so being able to make sure that you can identify what goal the statement says. So there'll be a little handout that you'll be able to find on LMS as well for the different goals. So 4 different goals of psychology: describe, explain, predict, and then control. So here is the goals broken down in a chart as well. So describe, so just kind of will reiterate it again. The first goal in understanding behavior and mental processes. So descriptions are used as a scientific, for scientific discovery. The second goal is to explain. So explanations are used to better understand the reasons for the conditions that cause the behavior or mental process to occur. So why is the behavior happening? The third goal is to predict. So understanding the behavior and mental processes, predictions can be made to specify when, what, and why the behavior or mental process will occur. So in what circumstances is it going to happen again? And then the fourth goal is understanding and then being able to control. So controls are used to manipulate or apply conditions to a desired behavior or mental process. So being able to control that behavior or mental process in the future. So theories are sets of hypothesized statements about relationships or principles that explain observed behaviors. So psychologists use theories to propose reasons for relationships among events and to allow us to derive explanations and predictions. So we're going to go through some of the historical theories of psychology. So the roots, so where did psychology come from? So that's going to be the next module. And then next week, we're going to look at the modern theory. So we're going to go through each one of those, and then we're going to start digging into those in more detail as we go through this semester. So that was module 1. So if you have any questions about the module, make sure that you come to the Teams meeting and we can go through that together. So thank you for watching.